Thank you. I will try not to use the microphone. I'll happily use it if you need it. So people in the back row, do I need to use the microphone?
No, we can listen.
You can hear me?
Yes.
It's easier for me, thank you. So I'll make a start. Yeah? And well, thank you for inviting me here this evening. The last talk I gave to the Historical Association of Oman was in 2006. There will be some repetition, but I'm sure you'll forgive me for that.
We forget it already. We forget it already. 2019, please.
So I'm going to talk about the areas I have collected information from, briefly about methods other than stars for timing Falaj water, and then about star use, which has been the main focus of my work in Oman. First, this is how it started. In early 2005, I was working for the Al-Hajj project based in Bahla, looking at traditional management of Aflag. The present is the key to the past, I think was their motto. And so I was taken by David Whitfield to Sharqiya, where the wakil showed me this wall with striations, and I was told that people stood there, or stand there at that time, to watch the stars. So I was fascinated, and I returned to Oman to learn more and to record the practice for future generations. This is a demonstration. That wall was not actually used in the Zahib timing system. Oh, hang on, wrong button. So the areas I have worked in, the Al-Hamra area and Mudabi areas were covered by my thesis, with field work between about 2005 and 2008. Later came Wadi Beni Jabar and Wadi Beni Kharous and Rustak. So, records of ownership of water shares and transactions are often made in Falaj books, but the method of timing is rarely written about, and so could only be established through observation and interviews. Astronomy software was also very useful for checking star identifications. This is the layout of Qaryat Beni Sub. There was one sundial, now gone, and 3 official stargazing points, each to cover the area closest to that point during the irrigation cycle. The only rules I have found so far for these locations is for them to be accessible and visible, with good visibility. So the sundial and points for watching stars may be moved when the new residential areas are built, or when the sundial becomes obscured by buildings, for example. So first, some examples of sundials. On the left, the former sundial from Qaryat Beni Sub. These are, by the way, sundials are still used in many places, although they are dying out slowly. So you have 24 athers by day and 24 athers at night. So the range of ather length, depending on the season, in theory is from 26 to 33 minutes, but in practice it's much more variable than that. So in Qaryat Beni Sub, you have white lines marking ather intervals and red lines marking saham intervals. The saham is less used. It is equal to about 1.5 athers. So Yasser is waiting now for the tip of the pole to reach this small stone, his personal marker, and then he will go and change the flow of the water to his fields. In Al-Fat, top right, palm stalks were used as personal markers, being very carefully placed to know the exact time. In Abat, in this area, the sundial was moved in 2009 when the former area got built up. And if it takes more than 10 minutes to walk from here to the channel, the conch shell is blown to let people waiting know that it's time for their water. Other methods include the water clock in Nizwa and a few places in the hills to the north. This was used both day and night. And in Falaj al-Azizi, in Sake at least, the water shares are recorded as Tasa, not as Asas. Shareja was still using the water clock in 2013, but no longer. The sand timer, once used in Wadi Tiwi, was said to have been brought from Zanzibar over 300 years ago, but it's been broken since I visited there in 2013. Wadi Tiwi is the only place I have come across that has used this. We heard that there might have been one in Izki, but this proves not to be the case. So, on to the stars. The stars rise at the same time interval after each other every night, and so can be used as a very accurate timer. Since they are not visible by day, each star apparently disappears for several months of the year. So different stars are used at different times of year. For timing Falaj water in the areas I studied, 21 to 27 main stars were used in the course of 1 year, with half an hour to 2.5 hours between their rise. So this slide shows the night sky in Garia in January with celestial coordinates which parallel latitude and longitude on Earth. The north-south lines are 2 hours apart. Here there are 3 main Falaj stars: Ashabik in Orion, also known as Al-Haka, one of the stations of the moon, Al-Jawza, and Ash'ara, here Procyon, not the brighter Sirius. There are also 3 divider stars, Betelgeuse, Pollux, and Altaf, none of which have names, even though they are bright stars. So much international knowledge of Arabic star names is based on the work of a Sufi, who updated Ptolemy's Almagest and collected pre-Islamic star names from earlier writers. This is a picture of the constellation Draco, the dragon, at Tanin, an example of his work. However, the stars used for Falaj purposes bear little relation to the classical Arab astronomy, or indeed the Islamic stations of the moon. The stargazers were not astronomers, and few knew the literary names for the stars, even if they could read or write, which several could not. So from one Falaj to another, different names may be used for the same star, or different stars may have the same name. In Misfat al-Abri'in, for example, Dabran is not Aldebaran, Alpha Tauri, but Capella, further north. And in Qaria Beni Sub, Al-Agrab is not an asterism in Scorpius, but El-Tanin in Draco, I think the eye. So that is Al-Agrab in Garia. This is an example from Orion of the same name being used for different stars. So, for example, in Barzaman, Orion's sword or Khanja was called Ashabik. Most places used Al-Haga for Al-Shabik. In Al-Fat, Ashabik was this star, which the stargazer saw. He saw the whole of Orion as a fishing net with Bellatrix on the circumference of the net. So this is the schedule for Hárriet Beni Sub on the left, the 21 main stars, the period that the star covers, and the number of asas between them. Most of us 16 days. That is the time till the dawn rise of the next star, next main star, with 2 asas between them, between their eyes. However, 4 of them, Kui, Al-Kawkabain, Al-Zakarain, and Al-Agrab, cover 3 asas and 24 days. On the right, I hope it's not too small that you can read some of it, is a list of 7 of the main stars with all the others used between them and their timings. So, as you can see, there are many divider stars that do not have names, and the times between them are quite variable, the shortest being 5.7 minutes. Several of the main Falaj stars are associated with agricultural activity. Some of the sayings refer to seasonal crops, such as sugarcane, such as asara, tale asara, asara, but my pronunciation isn't good enough. But many of these crops, well, sugarcane is now grown mainly by irrigation from pumped wells. So these are rhymes, and I couldn't find my recording, I'm afraid, to share with you. I do have it somewhere. So the simplest method of actually watching the stars for the timing is to watch the horizon, as in the areas of Al-Hamra, Wadi Beni Jabba, and Wadi Beni Kharous. In Misfata al-Abreen, which didn't start using stars until the late 19th century, towers were built to help people with poor eyesight identify some of the main stars, from Chui, Vega in the north, through Thuraya, Shubja or Sherbik again, to Al-Agrab in the south. Al-Miyazin is a divider, not a main Falaj star. So with this system, at least in this area, many divider stars are used to give divisions down to about 5 minutes. So you need to be able to recognize perhaps 100 stars, even more. The length of a nighttime asa in Garia, the only place where I collected such detailed information, ranges from about 20 to 50 minutes. So this shows the 3 asa divisions between 2 of the main stars, Kui and Al-Mufi. The small yellow stars are official dividers. They are actually called dividers. The blue one is used as a divider, but it's not called anything. It doesn't have a name. It looks and is complicated, as the star divisions do not bear much relationship to the Athar divisions. This is a combined chart for Stal and Hajir in Wadi Beni Kharous, where stars were also watched rising above the horizon. In Stal, there were 2 official points for watching, 300 meters apart, one for stars rising further south and one for stars rising further north. In Hajir, they were watched from a mosque, the wall of which also provided the shadow to be used for the sundial, as you will know from Dr. Al-Ghafri's work. So the pattern of main stars is similar in most of the places I have looked at, roughly following a belt of latitude equivalent to that of northern Oman, about 23 degrees north. So that most of the stars rise in the east and set in the west, which gives maximum visibility and for the longest time. A brief diversion to written sources. 2 manuscripts describing star schedules have been found so far. One from Al-Hamra and the other for Falaj Ain al-Khasfa or Hammam in Rustak. It appears that they were written by educated elders for their own interest, not for general use by the Falaj community. So this would mean nothing to the stargazers per se. This manuscript from Alhambra was only available as a photocopy, and these are the first 2 pages with the Falaj star names highlighted. What have we got? Al-Zakarain, Al-Ghafar, and Al-Agrab. It gives a description of the main stars and other stars used as dividers or indicators, usually including the number of stars, their relative brightness, the location and time of rise relative to other stars, and other indicators such as other stars in the zenith or setting. So this manuscript, together with field observations from Hárriét Beni Sub, made it possible to identify the majority of the stars in Alhambra. But the manuscript from Rustak was less detailed and not so useful. So in Halam, Abat, and Tayma, stars are or were watched setting as the western horizon is clearer. The most complete and reliable information we have is from Halam, as I was able to stay out all night with people knowledgeable about star use. So part of the schedule for Halam is given here. In some parts, the Falaj water is stored in reservoirs before release for irrigation. So on the whole, divider stars are not needed. But we do need more information on the distribution of water there to understand the timing system better. So here in Halam, Dabran is the 5 stars forming the head of Taurus. But only one star, Alpha, Aldebaran, is the official Falaj star. And that goes, many of these asterisms have more than one star, but the one in bold is that used for the Falaj timing. So if stars are watched setting, if they rise exactly east-west, they would set and rise at the same time. But if they don't, there can be a significant difference in their timing. So in Tayma, this asterism, 3 stars, is known as Thalatha Najm, 3 star. But if you watch it rising, as below here, they do indeed rise at the same time. But in Tayma, they are watched setting, and there is about 50 minutes difference between the time of setting of these stars. So I find this a bit strange that it is called the 3 star, and wonder if at one point they were watching them from the east, rising from the east and not setting in the west. In Sudaira and Barzaman near Mudabi, stars were watched above a local horizon, the top of a line of palm trees in Sudaira and this wall in Barzaman, although some years ago it was a different wall further south. So you start at the western edge of the wall and walk forwards. You start here, watch the main star rise, walk forwards, watch the same star rise later, and so on, and then return to the western edge of the road to watch the next main star. So divider stars are not needed. You can stop anywhere along this line, allowing divisions as short as a few minutes. In practice, a farmhand would not watch the whole sequence. He would just come to this point for a few minutes to check his star and then go and take his water. With this method, you only need to know the 24 main Falaj stars. But in Al-Fat and Zahib, a more complex method was used, with several walls and many places to stand to watch not the main Falaj stars, but what I call indicator stars, marking the time of rise and divisions between the main stars. So and at the time of my fieldwork, everyone was using stars, but now they do not. So in Al-Fat, a small mosque and its surrounds were used with markers inside these walls, a line of stones, also markers, and a point on a gate in the wall here. So here, Muhammad al-Habsi is demonstrating how he watched a Zakarain, Arcturus, set, marking the rise of the main stars Al-Ghurab and Adam. Sirius was also watched from here, but over a point further left, for the main stars Zakarain and Al-Ghafar. The Shara that is a main Falaj star is actually Procyon, not Sirius. On the other side of the arch, Sirius and Arcturus are watched rising for several main stars, with markers on the wall at 1 hour intervals. People also use personal markers for the night watch, including stones on the top of walls and, in one case, crisp packets pinned to the wall to know when was the time for their water. I do have the information for the complete sequence here and in Zahib, which follows. These are just some examples. So in a Zahib, a similar system was used along an east-west oriented path between buildings, with an inset of me being taught the system by the late Salim al-Hashmi. Walls A and B both had 3 sets of markers for watching different stars at different times. Jim just had 1 set. And here is one set of markers from wall A. So there are marks for each Atha, 2 to each star. So this set of markers is for 6 stars. Vega, Kui, was watched for the first few, and Altair for Shabik and Al-Balmi. And they were watch setting over the top of a wall, of a higher wall to the right. On this wall B, which is the only bit still extant, there were also 3 sets of markers. This is showing 1 for watching the rise of Dabran, for the main stars are Shahra and Al-Jamb. And the other marks are for different stars at a different time. So overall, this shows the main stars. All of these are main Falaj stars, but the stars actually watched are these 7, which are very bright, easily recognized stars, which made it in some ways easier for the farmhands to learn and use without help. I am sometimes asked about the relationship between Falaj stars, Islamic stations of the moon, and even navigational stars. So basically the blue are navigation, the yellow stations of the moon, and the others are Falaj stars. So you wouldn't really expect much relationship with navigation stars. Stations of the moon follow the ecliptic, the path of the moon. So some do overlap, but this group and this group are, on the whole, too far south to be used for main Falaj stars. So in the 1990s, some 4,000 Falaj systems were recorded, of which about 3,000 were still in use. And many of these would have used stars for timing water shares at night. Between 2005 and 2011, we identified some 10 communities still using them to some extent, but only 5, Qarya Bani Sob, Al-Fat, Barzaman, Zahib, and Halam, were they being used full-time by everybody. And once the main stargazer dies or is too ill, people stop using them. And today they are still used by a few people in Qaryat Beni Sub and Hallam. Now, although 5 Aflag are a designated UNESCO World Heritage Site, they do not include any of those which we have information on stars from. Currently, UCASA is working closely with the Ministry of Heritage and Tourism to document star use in more detail in several locations, to preserve this knowledge, and we're also trying to preserve the structures left in the Zahib and Al-Fat, which I think are unique in the world. I've never come across anything, not that I have traveled the world, but I think they are unique. So now in Zahib, only one wall is left. This one, wall B, from the previous side. But the buildings in Al-Fat have not been damaged, and we have been in touch with both communities to try to ensure that no further deterioration takes place. In November, I hope, Shuman Bandiapade from Liverpool will be coming to make a detailed survey and advise on their preservation. And there are 1 or 2 people, such as Khalfan al-Hatali here from Misfa, prepared to pass on their knowledge to the younger generation. But the challenge is to find younger people willing to learn and even use the system. So, thank you. It would take another half an hour to acknowledge everyone who helped me on this, but I have tried to acknowledge them in my published work. So, any questions?